Is your avoidant partner defensive? Well, here's something that might surprise you. Most people recognize that partners with avoidant attachment can respond defensively in emotionally charged situations. This can look like a lack of responsiveness, one-word answers, a stoic facial expression, closed-off body language, or just physically withdrawing from a situation. Now, most people assume it's because they must not care, but the reality is avoidant partners are actually quite emotionally fragile and vulnerable. Think of these defense mechanisms like secret shields protecting a wounded heart. They cut themselves off from emotional stimulation internally and externally to keep themselves safe from emotional manipulation, boundary violations, or losing themselves in a relationship. But when they feel safe enough and they're able to drop those shields, relationships can radically transform from full of conflict and push-pull dynamics into stable, loving, and reciprocal relationships. In order to do this, we need to address the deeper core problem and the common defense mechanisms that stem from it. In this segment, we are going to tackle this by first examining a toxic shame wound as the deeper core issue driving most defensive avoidant behavior. Then we will deconstruct 3 significant defense mechanisms that prevent avoidant partners and their loved ones from experiencing the kind of relationships that they want. And those are rationalization, idealization, and emotional withdrawal. So be sure to stick with me until the end, because once you crack the code on this, you will be able to stop feeling rejected and start feeling connected in your relationships. Go from feeling isolated and frustrated to understood and supported, and believe that you can transform your relationship into one filled with loving, secure connections, all without endless arguments or feelings of being undervalued. But don't take my word for it. When Mary came to me, she was struggling with feeling misunderstood and undervalued. But after taking my course, she discovered a deeper connection to herself and found that allowing herself to feel her emotions could be a source of healing. She even describes her learning experience as the best thing she's ever done for herself. But I'll let Mary speak for herself. What attracted you?
I think the word courageous, vulnerability to me and courage go together. Just made me curious. I think one of my favorites, though, for me, since emotions were so not okay for me, the one where we did a lot of art therapy and drew pictures. And I think that was really, really powerful because I can continue that work. That's something that's really unique and that is so needed for me. It's like you've been following me around. When you said about trying to explain things and being misunderstood or being judged or not feeling worthwhile, I mean, every single word, it was like, that's exactly me. And the emotion behind what we're saying and the wounding, I had no clue about that. That's what I think makes your work so amazing, because so many workshops don't do that. Yeah, it's just like, wow, I can be whole. There's no price for that. Go for it. It's the best thing I think I've ever done for myself.
Now, if you'd like to experience results like these, a link to my course, The Courageous Communicator, is attached to this video. When you click the link, you'll be taken to a registration page where you can sign up to watch the free introductory training for my program. This will allow you to learn my 3-step HIP communication formula, a proven roadmap to transform anxious avoidant dynamics into secure and loving connections. In the meantime, let's dig deeper into these topics for today, and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you enjoyed today's video. All right, let's dive in. Now, before we can explore the secret defense mechanisms inside an avoidant partner's heart, we need a deeper understanding of the core shame wound. First, a toxic shame wound is a deeply ingrained sense of unworthiness and self-blame that originates from early experiences of criticism, neglect, or emotional abandonment. These experiences teach individuals to view themselves as fundamentally flawed. Secondly, for avoidant partners, this wound manifests as an intense fear of vulnerability. They believe that opening up emotionally will lead to rejection or criticism, so they develop strategies to avoid such situations. And third, this fear drives them to maintain emotional distance, prioritize self-sufficiency, and employ various defense mechanisms to protect their sense of self and mask their underlying feelings of inadequacy and shame. Now, if you have an avoidant partner, you might hear this and wonder, well, does that mean that I should just leave my avoidant partner alone and always wait for them to initiate and not try to connect with them? No, because this will not challenge them to grow. which is what is required in healthy relationships. But there are more or less effective ways of approaching an avoidant partner. And so if you have an avoidant partner, instead of withdrawing from them when they get defensive, realize that these partners are not dismissing you out of a lack of care, but out of a deep-seated fear of vulnerability. Now, you can take action by approaching them with patience, consistency, understanding, and gentle persistence. This will lead to a more meaningful connection and help your partner feel safe enough to lower their defenses over time. This will also allow you to recognize their love in the unique ways that they express it. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out my video, 8 Signs an Avoidant Partner Loves You. Now, if you have an avoidant attachment yourself, when you feel yourself becoming defensive, remind yourself to take a pause, breathe, drop an inquiry down into your body, and find out what part of you feels scared and ashamed. Be sure to check in if this is really about your current situation or it's actually baggage from the past. Taking this mindful moment allows you to stop believing that you need to protect yourself from your partner and start trusting that you can share in your vulnerability. Once you allow yourself to experience more of your emotions, you will stop feeling so overwhelmed by them and start feeling more in control and understood by your partners. Now, if you want more help with taking a mindful pause, I recommend watching my video, Healing Fearful Avoidance in One Breath. So how might we recognize when this toxic shame wound is being stimulated? Well, when we see common defense mechanisms popping up in our interactions, which really brings us to the meat of today's discussion. So let's explore 3 specific defense mechanisms that avoidant partners use and how to recognize their influence on your relationship. The first one we are going to tackle is called rationalization. So rationalization is when we justify something painful by creating logical reasons to reduce its impact and emotional effect. So we see rationalization occur quite frequently where there are situations of abuse or neglect going on. This child has to rationalize the parent's behavior as somehow in service to their well-being. Otherwise, they might fall prey to an even deeper, more painful idea or belief that they must be worthless or unlovable to have deserved such poor treatment. And so in adult relationships, this looks like a battered wife rationalizing her black eye by saying, he didn't mean it, or I provoked him and should have known better. This could be the husband with an emotionally abusive wife rationalizing her habit of demeaning his character by saying, well, this is just how she expresses her needs and tells me how to love her better. Now, you might think that your avoidant partner is being deliberately dismissive or aloof, but sometimes they are using rationalization to protect themselves from deeper feelings of inadequacy and fears of failure. This defense mechanism also allows them to preserve their idealization of people or situations that might otherwise be seen as harmful or neglectful. And that's what we're going to talk about next. But first, does any of this sound familiar? Do you see rationalization as a defense popping up in your experience or relationships? Let me know in the comments. Now let's move on to the defense mechanism of idealization. Idealization is when we paint a distorted picture of our childhood parents and or partners to accept a difficult or painful situation, which preserves our attachment relationships and our way of thinking about them. So you know idealization is having an impact when someone glosses over or romanticizes negative or harmful behaviors from an important figure in their life, maintaining a positive view of them despite all the evidence to the contrary. So in this case, it's really easy to believe that the avoidant partner is simply overlooking flaws or being overly optimistic. But the reality is they're using idealization to cope with a fear of abandonment and the need to maintain a sense of self and identity and safety. So for example, most avoidant individuals have been emotionally abandoned in some fashion in their childhood and early development. And so to a child, abandonment is the equivalent of death. And so basic survival needs associated with attachment concerns are, my parents are okay and I matter. Now, if the messages and behaviors that the parents deliver to the child do not reflect the sentiment, there's a harmful kind of turning inwards and a distorting of ourselves and reality to make this true. So I want you to consider Anthony's story. When Anthony was a child, he frequently experienced his father's rage. As a child, Anthony used to think, Dad is in a rage and unleashed it on me again. I must have done something wrong to provoke it because Dad is a strong man and a realist. He's just teaching me to toughen up and survive in a cruel world. Now, in this scenario, the father is preserved as a good figure who is strong and a realist. This illustrates the idealization. Once Anthony adopted this idealization, it justifies the rationalization of his behavior. He's just teaching me to toughen up and survive in a cruel world. Now, in this case, you see how idealization and rationalization together can lead to maintaining harmful relationships and patterns of self-blame while completely missing or glossing over the telltale signs of abuse. Now, as an adult, Anthony operates under the false assumption that enduring pain and suffering is a sign of true love and care, and may actually be necessary for defining his character. He also tends to believe that you have to work hard for love, and if love comes too easily, it must be suspect or some kind of emotional manipulation. So this leads him to fall hard for women that don't seem to be all that interested in him, while dismissing other women who are warm and openly express their affection towards him. And so before Anthony can open up to this idea that healthy, nurturing relationships are possible without pain and suffering, he needs to learn how to recognize and challenge these distorted beliefs about himself and his relationships. Now, you might be wondering, well, how might someone like Anthony learn to recognize when they are falling prey to rationalization and idealization as a defense, so he can let go of these painful ideas and experience genuine loving connections? Well, in just a moment, I am going to share my highly effective 3-step healing framework in greater detail. But first, it's important to understand the impact of our third discussion point, which is emotional withdrawal. Now, emotional withdrawal is when individuals disconnect from their own emotions and from the emotions of others to avoid discomfort or fears of vulnerability. You know, this is happening when someone consistently pulls away from emotionally difficult conversations, shies away from other people's expressions of painful or even overly excited and positive emotions, or withdraws from group activities that require some kind of emotional investment. They might also shy away from jobs or situations that risk failure, humiliation, or require them to voice their thoughts and opinions. Now, you might think they are simply uninterested or emotionally unavailable, but the truth is they are using withdrawal as a defense mechanism to protect themselves from perceived emotional threats. You see, dismissive avoidant individuals often find it safer and more comfortable to remain disconnected from their internal emotional narrative. To accomplish this, they might employ other secondary defense mechanisms, such as intellectualizing, minimizing, dismissing, placating, accommodating, appeasing, criticizing, clamming up, or even using humor as a deflection. In a relationship, this can lead to a lack of genuine emotional connection, feelings of isolation, and unresolved conflicts, while the avoidant partner operates under the false assumption that this emotional detachment will protect them from hurt and rejection. To turn this around, they must realize that embracing their full emotional range and allowing themselves to be vulnerable is essential for true connection and growth. By accepting this, they can move towards believing that deep, nurturing relationships are possible. That will finally allow them to stop avoiding emotionally charged situations and start engaging with them constructively. This leads to stronger, more meaningful connections in love. And so, well, what would that look like? Well, let's go back to our case example with Anthony. When Anthony believes that he must endure pain to feel connected, that suffering is a sign of true love, and that withdrawing protects him from hurt, he perpetuates negative patterns in his relationships. However, if Anthony can adopt the attitude that he deserves to be loved without suffering, that vulnerability is a strength, and that emotional engagement is safe, he can learn to open up and connect more genuinely, making fulfilling relationships entirely possible. So for Anthony, instead of rationalizing his partner's negative behaviors to avoid a deep fear about his own lovability, now he can recognize and address those issues, which leads to healthier boundaries. Instead of idealizing abusive partners, he can see them for all of their strengths and their flaws, which improves his discernment in choosing more nurturing, supportive partners and relationships. And instead of withdrawing emotionally, he can engage and communicate openly, leading to conflict repair and deeper intimacy. If this sounds good to you, give this video a like and drop a comment below so that I know I'm on the right track. Okay, so what is the solution? How might someone like Anthony learn to recognize rationalization, challenge idealization, and engage with emotional conversations instead of withdrawing? Well, this is where my solution and highly effective 3-step HIP communication formula and the Courageous Communicator course come in. So my course, the Courageous Communicator, equips you with the tools to go from cold silences to soulful intimacy in 90 days. It's an online self-directed program that includes lifetime access to 2 live Q&A calls per month with me, helping professional singles and couples develop healthy communication skills based on attachment styles using trauma-informed energy healing and art therapy techniques. So this 3-step HIP communication formula structures the curriculum for my course. It takes successful, conscientious individuals on a journey from feeling isolated and misunderstood to experiencing deep, meaningful connections, all without endless arguments or feelings of being undervalued. And so the first step on this journey, I call healing your conflict blueprint. And in this phase, students, just like Anthony, are usually struggling with push-pull dynamics and feeling isolated. They want to feel peace and connection and love, but what they need is to identify and transform the underlying unmet emotional needs that are driving their defense mechanisms and conflict patterns. So in the Courageous Communicator, we address these challenges by teaching you how to recognize the 3 most common conflict styles and how attachment styles drive these conflicts. We teach you how to end mixed signals and avoid known triggers in communication. And you learn to identify when a problem requires conflict management versus conflict resolution, which includes knowing the difference between an authentic emotional expression and when we're using critical evaluations. Now, in the second phase, I call this inspiring devotion. And students are usually pretty happy to have been able to reduce some of the conflict in their relationships after the first phase, but they're still struggling with expressing their needs and setting boundaries. They want harmony and understanding, but what they really need is to embrace self-validation and navigate their struggles with boundaries through compassionate communication. In my program, we address these challenges by focusing on learning the 3 keys to compassionate communication, using somatic-informed art therapy techniques to promote co-regulation and attunement, and we teach you how to identify toxic communications while tactfully setting boundaries. And that leads us to the 3rd step, and I call this practicing emotional intimacy. And so students are feeling more secure and connected now that they can communicate effectively and set better boundaries, but they still struggle with deepening the intimacy and maintaining a long-term connection. They want lasting passion and closeness, but what they really need is to connect with their own body and recognize patterns of emotional and energetic armoring so they can sustain passion and chemistry over time. So we address these challenges in my program by connecting to your body so you can feel less defensive and more receptive. You develop a relationship love map and vision board for a shared vision for your future. And you also self-assess your own erotic blueprints so you can connect to your sensuality and deepen emotional intimacy. And so by the end of this particular phase, you're able to clearly define and advocate for your boundaries with ease. You experience reciprocal care and generosity with deepening intimacy, and you feel much more excited and deeply attracted to your partner. If you are single, you are better able to tap into your own vital life force libidinal energy and feel sensual and deeply connected to your own body. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I want to share some success stories from folks that have taken my course and seen results.
I had this ugly kind of communication with my daughter of 15.
I still find that somehow or other I seem to be sabotaging relationships.
Because I have experienced the anxious avoidant dynamic in my relationships.
My favorite lesson of activity, I think, was actually understanding about safe strategies and soft strategies.
We start with evaluation, and then you transform it to feelings, and then she makes us aware through the bodily experience, and then we express it in art. So that kind of is magic.
I find it very clear and helpful in understanding how the way I want others to communicate with me in order to feel safe and secure is not necessarily what others need.
And she alleviated my perfectionism a little bit by letting us know, look, this is a process and that's okay, and that it can actually be fun. And she helped us kind of reframe the whole, terrifying journey into yourself of why you do what you do and how to change it and all the vulnerability that comes with that.
I was actually able to get more in tune with myself when it comes to relating to people's emotions and feelings.
Which allowed me to really practically apply what Brianna was teaching us. Super useful, especially in moments of higher conflict or higher communication problems.
This goes way far beyond.
And you just get this like light bulb moment after light bulb moment that sets you free. You're like, wow, I'm not a horrible person after all. There's so much hope. I'm normal. I can let the love in.
So it's nice that somebody like Brianna is there to help us heal that. Her work really transforms lives. I feel like she's the real deal.
Now, I'm happy to say that these results are not unique. What makes my course and my 3-step solution so effective is the spiritual approach to healing with experiential modalities. Now, why is that so effective? Because it's not possible to think your way around attachment wounding. You must feel your way through them. And when you invest in one of my programs, you receive more than just hours of lectures and journal assignments. Instead, you feel more grounded and centered using body-activating guided meditations and visualizations that afford you greater control of your emotions. You develop a greater sense of personal empowerment and agency while exploring things like art therapy techniques that tap into your vital life force energy and remind you of your creative spark and capacity for joy and curiosity. You learn to transform intellectual insight into actionable processes that help you to not only think differently, but feel differently while attracting and feeling attracted to healthier people. Now, if you're ready to experience results like these, click the link to the introductory training to the Courageous Communicator program attached to this video. When you click the link, you'll be taken to a registration page where you can sign up to watch the free introductory training for my program. Okay, so with that, let's wrap up this video with some final thoughts. Avoidant attachment is a type of insecure attachment style where individuals tend to emotionally distance themselves from others, often valuing independence and self-reliance over intimacy and connection. Most people assume it means the person doesn't care or is dismissive because of behaviors like emotional withdrawal, rationalization, and idealization. But the truth is, avoidant partners are often protecting themselves from a deep-seated fear of vulnerability and a toxic shame wound. From this new perspective, we can now understand how avoidant defense mechanisms stem from this core issue and prevent real connection in relationships. Now, one of the primary growth challenges for avoidant partners is to heal this shame and change these defense mechanisms. This includes letting go of old beliefs, such as, I have to endure pain to feel connected. Withdrawing protects me from hurt, and adopting new, more positive beliefs, such as, I deserve to be loved without suffering. Vulnerability can be a strength, and emotional sharing is safe. And so this new understanding opens up the possibilities for deep, nurturing relationships without the struggles of emotional disconnection and misunderstanding. Now, if you are a partner of someone who has avoidant attachment, I just want to add a cautionary note. Regardless of someone's attachment style or even their capacity for intellectual insight, if they are not ready, willing, or wanting to work on the relationship in mutually beneficial ways, you cannot force someone to change. There are some tips and strategies for showing up the best way possible to the relationship, creating what opportunities you can for inspiring devotion and connection. And if you want to learn more about those, my Courageous Communicator program goes into this in great detail. But even if you show up with 100% of your good intentions, it is still only 50% of what's required to make a relationship work. Love can go knocking on an avoidant partner's door, but they have to be the ones to let it in. Given that, I want to assure you that avoidant partners are not unemotional or uncaring. They really do want connection and desire to feel safe and loved in relationships, just like everybody. And feeling more secure, connected, and understood in relationships is not only possible, but probable when avoidant partners are ready and willing to face their negative assumptions and take action on proven solutions. Accomplishing this includes skill building in the areas of identifying and transforming your conflict patterns, embracing compassionate communication, and fostering emotional intimacy over time. And so my 3-step HIP communication formula holds your hand every step of the way through these growth challenges using a multimodal and experiential approach in my course, The Courageous Communicator. Now, again, if you'd like to learn more about that, you can click the link attached to this video and register for the free introductory training. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and insightful. Please leave your comments below and share your experiences. And also subscribe to my channel for more content on building loving and secure relationships. Your support means a lot to me, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. Thank you and have a great week. Also, remember to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week and I wouldn't want you to miss out.